The rain hammered against the carbon fiber windshield like bullets, each drop illuminated by the heads-up display projecting Marcus Chen's vitals across the glass. Elevated heart rate. Blood pressure climbing. The AI assistant's synthetic voice chirped a concern he immediately dismissed with a flick of his wrist across the haptic controls. 55 years old and still working 16-hour days. His sister Victoria's message blinked insistently in his peripheral vision, her avatar's perfectly sculpted face frozen mid-sentence. "We need to talk about your retirement. You're 55, Marcus. Time to let the next generation lead." He swiped it away without reading further. The next generation. His children. The thought made something cold and heavy settle in his chest. He'd built Chen Global Industries from nothing, literally nothing. His father had been a janitor, his mother a seamstress working out of their cramped apartment. Marcus had poured concrete in the summers to pay for community college, launched his first tech startup from a garage with borrowed equipment and maxed-out credit cards. 30 years later, Chen Global employed 15,000 people across 3 continents, pioneering AI-driven sustainable infrastructure that had reshaped skylines from Singapore to Sao Paulo. The mountain road curved ahead, slick with rain. Marcus pressed the manual override, preferring the feel of the wheel under his hands. Control. He'd always needed control. Maybe that was the problem. Maybe Victoria was right. Maybe. The brake pedal went soft under his foot. He pressed harder. Nothing. The AI screamed warnings as the car accelerated into the curve, traction control fighting a losing battle against momentum and gravity. Marcus yanked the wheel, but the car was already airborne, spinning, the world a chaos of rain and darkness, and the horrible crystal clarity that this was it. This was how it ended, not in a boardroom or surrounded by family but alone on a mountain road at 11 p.m. because he couldn't stop working, couldn't stop proving himself to ghosts who'd been dead for 20 years. The impact shattered everything. 2 weeks later, Marcus woke to the antiseptic smell of a hospital room and James Rodriguez's weathered face hovering above him. His old friend from community college, now a renowned trauma surgeon. The relief in James's eyes was complicated by something else. Something that made Marcus's newly repaired heart skip. "Don't try to talk," James said, adjusting the neural monitor wrapped around Marcus's skull. "You've been out for 13 days. Multiple fractures, internal bleeding, severe concussion. You're lucky to be alive." He paused, fingers moving across a holographic chart only he could see through his medtech lenses. "Marcus, I need to tell you something. Your brake lines were cut. Clean slice, not wear and tear. Someone wanted you dead." The heart monitor spiked. James quickly moved to the fore-drip, his movements practiced and efficient. "I told your family you died during surgery," James continued, his voice barely above a whisper. "You had another cardiac episode when the police told you about the tampering. I thought the shock might actually kill you." Your family's response. He trailed off, then pulled out a small audio device, placing it carefully on Marcus's chest. "I recorded them. Outside the room. Right after I told them you were gone." James pressed play. Victoria's voice came through first, crisp and clear despite the tinny speaker. "Finally. God, I thought the old man would outlive us all." Brandon, his nephew, laughed. "When's the will reading?" "I've got debts to pay. Can we at least pretend to be sad for the press?" That was Christina, Brandon's sister, her tone carrying the same casual indifference someone might use discussing a broken appliance. Not one of them cried. Not one asked about his suffering, his final moments, whether he'd been in pain. Just money. Just inheritance. Just the relief of a problem finally solved. Marcus closed his eyes, but tears escaped anyway, running hot down his temples into the sterile pillow. James caught them with a tissue, his expression a mixture of sympathy and rage. "What do I do?" Marcus finally managed, his voice a ruined croak. James was quiet for a long moment, then leaned in close. "Disappear. Recover. Find out who you can trust. I'll arrange everything, fake death certificate, cremation papers. I've got connections who can set you up with a new identity." "But Marcus?" He gripped his friend's shoulder. "Don't come back until you know whether you built a company or a nest of vipers." 3 years later, Marcus stood in the silent cathedral of Chin Global's 47th floor at 3 a.m, emptying trash bins with practiced efficiency. His name tag read Marcus L. in utilitarian sans serif font. He'd grown lean from the physical work. His once soft executive hands now calloused and strong. Thick-framed smart glasses altered the shape of his face just enough to make him unrecognizable, though in truth the real disguise was simpler than that. People didn't look at janitors. Not really. They saw the uniform, the cart, the role. Never the man. He paused at the executive floor's glass walls, staring at his own portrait mounted in the Hall of Founders. Younger Marcus gazed back, confident and polished, the caption beneath reading Marcus Chen, 1967 to 2022, visionary founder. Dead but not forgotten. Immortalized in pixels and corporate legend. The man in the portrait had everything. The man holding the mop had nothing but the truth. "They say you don't know your family until there's money involved," Marcus murmured to his reflection. "I spent 3 years dead, watching mine from the bottom. What I learned broke my heart. But it also gave me hope." His eyes moved to the bulletin board near the elevators, a relic from his own management style that somehow survived Victoria's regime. Employee announcements, shift swaps, community events. One flyer caught his attention as it always did: free adult education, GED, ESL, computer literacy. The teaching staff list included a name that made his hands tremble slightly. Lily Park, art design. He knew that name. He'd investigated that name. 6 months ago, when a 7-year-old girl had approached him in the community center's hallway. Her face bright with innocent concern, a Tupperware container clutched in her small hands. "Excuse me, Mr. Janitor?" The child had smiled at him like he mattered. Like he was worth smiling at. "My mom made extra dumplings." "You work so late, you must be hungry." Marcus had frozen, caught completely off guard by the simple kindness. When was the last time someone had offered him food? Real food, not the catered lunches and business dinners designed to impress clients. Food made by hands that cared. "Thank you, sweetheart," he'd managed. "What's your name?" "Sophie Park. My mom teaches art here on Tuesdays." She'd tilted her head, studying him with the unguarded curiosity of childhood. "What's your name?" "You can call me Marcus." "Just Marcus?" "That's like Madonna." She'd giggled. "Are you famous?" The laugh had burst out of him before he could stop it, genuine and startled. When was the last time he'd laughed? Really laughed? "No, honey. Just a janitor. My mom says people who work hard are the real heroes. Not people with fancy titles." Sophie had stated this with the absolute conviction of someone repeating a beloved truth. She says if everyone refused to clean, the world would stop in 3 days, but if all the CEOs disappeared, workers would figure it out. The words had hit Marcus like a physical blow. This child's mother, whoever she was, understood something fundamental that his own family had forgotten. That he himself had forgotten, somewhere between the garage startup and the corporate empire. "Your mom sounds wise," he'd said carefully. "She's the best. She works 2 jobs so I can do ballet. And she never complains, even when she's tired." Sophie had thrust something at him, a crayon drawing on cheap paper. Marcus mopping the floor, wearing a cape. The caption read, "Super clean man," in uneven letters. From that night, Sophie had left drawings every week. Marcus had started leaving gifts in return, fancy gel pens that appeared anonymously on Lily Park's desk, art supplies donated to her classroom with no return address. Small kindnesses that he told himself were merely curious observation but felt like something deeper. Something hungry for connection he'd lost track of how to build. The private investigator's report had arrived 2 weeks later, delivered through enough intermediary accounts and dead drop servers to ensure total anonymity. Marcus had read it 3 times, memorizing every detail. Lily Park, 31 years old. Elementary art teacher at a public school, freelance graphic designer on weekends. Combined income $42,000 a year, barely above the poverty line in this city's inflated economy. $38,000 in medical debt from Sophie's pneumonia last year. 1-bedroom apartment where the mother slept on the couch so her daughter could have the bedroom, estranged from the Chen family. Engaged to David Chen from 2019 to 2020, Marcus had stared at that line until the text blurred. David. His youngest son. The sensitive one, the artist who'd never fit the corporate mold, who'd supposedly died in the same accident that killed Marcus. Except David hadn't died. Marcus knew that now. David had witnessed someone tampering with the car that morning and fled in terror, thinking he'd be next. Marcus had tracked him down 6 months ago, found him teaching English in Portugal under a fake name, racked with guilt and PTSD. But this woman, this Lily Park, she'd been pregnant when David disappeared. Had raised their daughter alone for 7 years. Never filed for child support. Never contacted the Chen family for money despite drowning in debt. Never sold her story to the press despite tabloids offering millions for insider Chen family drama. Salt of the earth, one character witness had said. Lily donates art supplies to underfunded schools even when she can barely afford groceries. That little girl of hers is the same way, kindest kid you'll ever meet. The detail that haunted Marcus most was in the surveillance photos. Lily wore a thin gold chain, visible at her neckline when she leaned forward. The investigator had managed a close-up. Dangling from that chain, tucked beneath her shirt and hidden from the world, was a modest engagement ring. David's ring. She still wore it. After 7 years of silence and abandonment and struggling alone. She still wore his son's promise against her heart. She was everything my children weren't, Marcus whispered now to the empty hallway. Everything he'd failed to teach them. Work ethic without ego. Kindness without expectation of return. The ability to find dignity in struggle rather than demanding comfort as a birthright. His granddaughter. Sophie was his granddaughter. And neither of them knew he existed. The elevator chimed, making Marcus turn sharply. Victoria emerged, still dressed in evening wear from whatever society function she'd attended. She didn't even glance at him as she strode past, heels clicking against marble, heading toward her office. Marcus waited 60 seconds. Then followed with his cleaning cart, the picture of a night janitor making his rounds. Victoria's office lights were on. Through the glass walls, she'd installed those herself, claiming transparency while actually just wanting everyone to see her in her throne. Marcus watched her pour expensive whiskey from a crystal decanter. Her computer screen glowed, reflected in the floor-to-ceiling windows that overlooked the sleeping city. Marcus pushed his cart closer, pretending to empty a trash bin near her door. The angle gave him a clear view of her screen. Email threads. Legal documents. A message to Brandon and Christina with today's timestamp. Rothschild International has offered $4.2 billion for full acquisition. I recommend we accept. David's bastard complicates things. Genetic testing confirmed her lineage. I've invited the mother to next month's summit. We'll offer her $250,000 to sign away all inheritance rights. She's desperate enough to take it. Marcus's grip tightened on the trash bin until the metal creaked. Victoria looked up sharply. He immediately busied himself with emptying it, the picture of minimum wage disinterest. She stared at him for a long moment, then dismissed him with the same attention she'd give a piece of furniture. Turning back to her schemes, Marcus photographed the screen with the micro camera embedded in his glasses, then continued his rounds. His hand shook slightly as he pushed the cart, rage and grief warring in his chest. They were going to ambush Lily. Humiliate her publicly at the annual Chen family summit, that grotesque display of wealth and status that had become more important than actual family connection. Offer her money to make his granddaughter disappear, to erase Sophie from the Chen legacy like an accounting error. Not if he had anything to say about it. Back in his studio apartment, 600 square feet in a neighborhood his former self would never have visited, Marcus sat at his second-hand desk and pulled out a burner phone. One contact saved. One number he'd memorized but never dared call until now. He typed carefully, "It's time. Your daughter needs her father. And your family needs Judgment Day." The response came within seconds, as if David had been waiting 3 years for exactly this message. "I'm ready. Tell me what to do." Marcus stared at those words, feeling the weight of 3 years of planning, of watching, of learning who his family truly was when they thought no one important was paying attention. Victoria wanted to make Lily disappear. Instead, Marcus was going to make himself reappear. And when he did, everything would change. But first, Lily needed help. She didn't know it yet, but she was walking into a trap. 1 week before the summit, Marcus's phone buzzed with a news alert. His heart stopped when he read it. Sophie Park, age 7, admitted to City General Hospital. Pneumonia relapse. Critical condition. He was at the hospital within 20 minutes, still wearing his janitor uniform because he'd been heading to his night shift when the alert came through. The AI systems he'd installed to monitor mentions of Lily and Sophie's names had finally paid off, though he wished desperately it hadn't been like this. The pediatric ICU was chaos, understaffed nurses running between beeping monitors, parents with hollow eyes haunting the waiting room. Marcus found Lily in a hallway, collapsed against the wall, her whole body shaking with silent sobs. Her hands covered her face. Fingers tangled in her hair. A tablet lay beside her on the floor, medical bills displayed in stark red text. $15,000. Out of pocket, Marcus sat down beside her without a word. Just sat there in his janitor's uniform, close enough that their shoulders nearly touched but not quite. Offering presents without pressure. It was something he'd learned in 3 years of watching people, really watching them. Sometimes the greatest kindness was just bearing witness to another person's pain without trying to fix it or minimize it or make it about yourself. Lily looked up eventually, her face blotchy and wet. She stared at him for a long moment, recognition flickering in her red eyes. You're the janitor. From the community center, Marcus," he said quietly. "And you're Sophie's mom. Lily, she keeps talking about you. The nice janitor who likes her drawings." Lily's voice cracked. "She's in there fighting for her life and I can't even afford to keep her healthy. What kind of mother am I, the kind who works 2 jobs? Who puts her daughter in ballet? Who teaches her that kindness matters more than money?" Marcus kept his voice gentle but firm. "You're a warrior, Lily. Warriors don't lose, they do. All the time. But they get back up. And they ask for help when they need it." Lily laughed, the sound bitter and broken. "My daughter's father's family invited us to some event. Some fancy summit thing next month. They're going to offer me money to go away. To pretend Sophie doesn't exist. To sign papers saying she's not really a Chen. She wiped her eyes roughly. And you know what? I'm going to take it. Because Sophie's life is worth more than my pride. Marcus felt something crack open in his chest. This woman. This extraordinary woman who'd been offered $250,000 to erase his granddaughter from existence, and she was going to take it not out of greed but out of love. Because she'd do anything to save her child, or, Marcus said carefully, you could go and show them exactly what they've been missing. Show them who your daughter is. Let them see what's really valuable. Lily stared at him. In what? My Target clearance dress? These people have personal stylists and designer everything. They'll eat me alive. Marcus hesitated. He was about to cross a line, reveal himself in a way that might compromise everything. But looking at Lily's defeated expression, at the bills on her tablet screen, at the mother willing to sacrifice her dignity for her daughter's health, he couldn't not act. What size are you? He asked. What, dress size? What's your size? 2 days later, Lily opened a package delivered to her apartment. Inside, wrapped in tissue paper, was a dress. Not ostentatious designer fashion, but elegant and understated, the kind of garment that spoke of quality without screaming about price. The fabric felt like water under her fingers. The cut would flatter without trying too hard. Modest enough for someone with her values, beautiful enough to hold her own in any room. The note tucked inside read, armor for a warrior. You're not alone. A friend, Sophie, recovered enough to come home but still weak, peered over her mother's shoulder. Mom, it's like Cinderella. Do you think Mr. Marcus sent it? He's always doing nice things. Lily touched the fabric, tears sliding down her cheeks for a very different reason now. Maybe, she whispered. Maybe magic is just people being kind when you need it most. In his apartment across the city, Marcus watched the delivery confirmation pop up on his screen. Phase 1 complete. Now came the hard part. Now came the reckoning his family had no idea was coming. They thought they were inviting a desperate single mother to a negotiation they controlled. They had no idea they were about to face judgment from a ghost they thought they'd successfully killed. Marcus pulled out his tablet and began reviewing the summit guest list, the seating chart, the security protocols. He'd spent 3 years learning every detail of how his company operated without him. Victoria thought she'd claimed his throne. She had no idea she was just keeping it warm. His phone buzzed. David again. Should I book the flight? Marcus typed back, yes. But stay hidden until I give the signal. Your entrance needs to be perfectly timed. Another message appeared. His private investigator. Brandon Chen just left his therapist's office. Gambling addiction, apparently. He's borrowed money from some dangerous people. Then another alert. Christina Chen's charity foundation is under investigation for fraud. She's been pocketing donations. The pieces were all falling into place. His family had spent 3 years showing him exactly who they were when they thought no one was watching. When they thought the only person who might have held them accountable was dead and gone. Marcus smiled grimly at his reflection in the darkened tablet screen. Not dead. Not gone. Just patient. And patience, he'd learned, was the greatest weapon of all. The Chen family mansion sprawled across 3 acres of manicured hillside, its smart glass walls shifting from opaque to transparent as the automated security system scanned each arriving vehicle. Lily Park watched through the Uber's window as a Tesla Roadster pulled up ahead of them, its gull-wing doors rising like chrome wings. A woman emerged in a dress that probably cost more than Lily made in 6 months, her augmented reality contact lenses glinting as she uploaded arrival photos directly to her social feeds. Big event. Huh? The Uber driver, an older man with kind eyes, whistled low. You folks rich? Sophie bounced in her booster seat, grinning. No, but Mom says we're rich in love, the driver laughed, meeting Lily's eyes in the rearview mirror. That's the best kind, kiddo. Lily forced a smile, her hand instinctively moving to the chain beneath her dress. David's ring pressed against her sternum, a small circle of warmth and weight. 8 years she'd worn it hidden. 8 years since he'd disappeared, since the news feeds had screamed about the car crash that killed Marcus Chen and his youngest son. 8 years of raising Sophie alone, of working 2 jobs, of telling her daughter that her father had loved them even though he'd never met her. The Uber pulled up to the entrance. Marble fountains flanked the walkway, their water programmed to dance in synchronization with whatever classical piece the estate's AI deemed appropriate for the evening. Currently it was Vivaldi, the water leaping and falling in time with the violins. Gold accents gleamed everywhere, on the door handles, the fountain fixtures, even embedded in the cobblestones themselves. Ostentatious didn't begin to cover it. Come on, Mama. Sophie tugged at her hand, already sliding out of the car. Her thrift store dress, pale blue with small flowers that Lily had spent 3 evenings altering to fit perfectly, looked sweet and innocent. It also looked exactly like what it was, second-hand and homemade. Lily's own dress, the mysterious gift that had arrived at her apartment, felt like armor. The fabric moved like water, elegant without screaming designer, cut to flatter without revealing too much. She still didn't know who'd send it. Part of her suspected Marcus the janitor, though that seemed impossible. Why would a night custodian have access to clothing like this? They approached the entrance. The conversations on the steps didn't exactly halt, but they shifted. Heads turned. Eyes tracked. Lily heard the whispers carried on the evening breeze, amplified by the directional audio systems that made outdoor gatherings feel intimate. Is that the help's daughter? Victoria said we might have a situation tonight. David's bastard, apparently. The mother's a teacher or something. Lily's spine stiffened. She squeezed Sophie's hand once, twice, their signal. Stay close. Be brave. Sophie squeezed back 3 times. I love you. The foyer opened into a cathedral of wealth. Holographic art installations floated in midair, responding to movement with cascading light. The floor was heated marble, the ceiling studded with embedded LEDs that mimicked a star field. Servers moved through the crowd with trays of champagne and hors d'oeuvres, their movements choreographed by the house AI to ensure maximum efficiency and minimum obstruction. A young man detached from a group near the bar, champagne flute in one hand. His other hand manipulating his phone with practiced ease. Brandon Chen, Victoria's nephew. His augmented reality glasses were recording everything, uploading to his social feeds in real time. 3 million followers watched his life unfold in curated snippets of wealth and privilege. Well. His voice carried, amplified deliberately by the room's acoustics. He'd adjusted the settings. Everyone could hear him. Looks like we're dining with charity cases tonight. Tell me, he gestured at Lily with his champagne glass. Do you even know which fork to use? Lily met his eyes steadily. She'd taught middle school for 9 years. Entitled rich kids held no mystery for her. The one for eating. Same as everyone else, a woman materialized beside Brandon, her dress an experimental smart fabric that shifted colors with her mood. Currently it flickered between emerald and gold, amused, slightly aggressive. Christina Chan, Brandon's sister. Her contact lenses marked her as recording too, her follower count hovering in the air beside her head courtesy of her personal AR overlay. 4.2 million people were watching this interaction. Oh, she's got spirit. Christina's laugh was practiced, designed for maximum viral potential. Too bad spirit doesn't pay bills. That dress is quaint. It was a gift, Lily said quietly, from Goodwill? The comments on Christina's feed scrolled past in real time. Visible to anyone with AR enabled. Laughing emojis. Fire emojis. A few supportive comments quickly buried by the mockery. Sophie tugged at Lily's hand, confusion creasing her small face. What's wrong with gifts? Mr. Marcus always says it's the thought that, not now, baby. Lily's voice came out sharper than she intended. Sophie's face fell. Guilt twisted in Lily's stomach, but she couldn't explain. Couldn't tell her 7-year-old daughter that these people, her father's family, saw them as problems to be solved rather than people to be welcomed. A chime echoed through the space, the sound engineered to be pleasant but commanding. Dinner. The crowd began moving toward the dining hall. A space that could comfortably seat 80 but tonight held only 50. The Chen family and their closest associates. The inner circle, the seating chart materialized in holographic form above the entrance, names glowing beside table positions. Lily found hers immediately. She and Sophie were at the far end, nearest the kitchen doors. The seats reserved for unwanted guests. For people you had to invite but didn't want to acknowledge. The dining table was a single piece of engineered wood, its surface embedded with haptic controls that allowed each guest to customize their meal temperature, adjust the lighting at their position, even change the AR overlays that transformed the table into various artistic displays. Currently it showed a koi pond, the fish swimming lazily beneath their plates. Lily helped Sophie into her chair, acutely aware of the eyes tracking their movement. The other guests were settling in, their designer clothes and augmented accessories marking them as people who belonged. She and Sophie were the only ones wearing unmodified garments. The only ones without visible tech enhancements. The only poor people in a room full of billions. Victoria Chen stood at the head of the table, her position marked by a subtle elevation. The floor there was raised exactly 3 inches, enough to give her height advantage without being obvious. She was 55, perfectly preserved through a combination of expensive procedures and good genetics. Her dress was elegant, her jewelry understated but undoubtedly worth more than most people's houses. When she tapped her glass with one perfectly manicured finger, the sound reverberated through hidden speakers. Family, welcome. Her voice was warm, practiced. Tonight we celebrate the Chen legacy, built on ambition, excellence, and knowing one's place in the world. Her eyes found Lily across the expansive table. The koi beneath the surface seemed to scatter from her gaze. We also address complications. Victoria's smile didn't waver. Mississippi Park, thank you for joining us. I know this must be overwhelming for someone of your background. Every muscle in Lily's body wanted to leave. To grab Sophie and run. Instead she managed a nod. Thank you for the invitation, Mrs. Chen. It's Miss Chen. The correction was gentle, which somehow made it worse. I never married. Unlike some, I don't need a man to define me. The pause was deliberate, the implication clear. Now, let's discuss your daughter. DNA testing confirms she's David's child. Which means she's entitled to certain considerations. Lily's grip tightened on her fork. The haptic surface registered her tension, the koi beneath her plate swimming in agitated circles. However, Victoria's tone shifted, businesslike now. Given your financial difficulties, which we're aware of, we're prepared to make this simple. $250,000. Cash. In exchange, you sign documents relinquishing any claim to the Chen name, Chen estate, Chen inheritance. Sophie grows up as Sophie Park, and we all move forward. The table buzzed with reaction. Some family members nodded approvingly. Others watched with the fascination of people observing a social execution. Brandon's voice carried from his end of the table. Hell, That's more than you'd make in 6 years teaching finger painting to brats. Richard Chen, Marcus's brother, swirled his wine thoughtfully. Generous, really. Most gold diggers don't get a dime. The words hit Lily like physical blows. I am not a gold digger. Her voice shook despite her efforts to control it. I loved your brother. David is dead. Victoria's words were final, carved in stone. And even if he weren't, you were a phase. A youthful mistake. This family has standards. Breeding. Legacy. You're a sweet girl, I'm sure, but you're not Chin material. Sophie's small voice cut through the tension. My daddy loved my mommy. He gave her a ring. She still wears it. Christina's laugh was bright, cruel. What, a ring pop? The comments on her feed exploded. The moment was going viral in real time. Lily could see it in the way other guests glanced at their own AR displays, sharing the clip, adding commentary. By tomorrow morning, this humiliation would have millions of views. Let me be clear, Mississippi Park. Victoria leaned forward slightly, her position on the raised platform giving her the appearance of a judge pronouncing sentence. Take this money, or we'll make your life hell. We'll tie Sophie's inheritance up in legal battles for decades. We'll audit your taxes, your finances. We'll make sure every parent at your school knows you're trying to extort the Chin family. You'll lose everything, Brandon gestured with his champagne glass. The motion exaggerated for his recording audience. Or you could be smart, take the cash, and give your kid a real future. Buy a house. Pay off your debts. Disappear, Lily's vision blurred. She was vaguely aware of Sophie beside her, confusion giving way to understanding, understanding giving way to tears. Her daughter was realizing, in real time, that her father's family didn't want them. That they were something to be paid off and forgotten. You're all being mean. Sophie's voice cracked as she stood on her chair, small fists clenched. My mom is the best person in the world. She works so hard. Someone remove this child before she embarrasses herself further. Victoria's command was casual. Almost bored, a security guard appeared, his uniform crisp, his expression apologetic but firm. He reached for Sophie. Sophie jumped off her chair and ran. Lily surged to her feet, but the guard's hand caught her shoulder. Ma'am, please. Let us handle this, that's my daughter. The words tore out of her, loud enough to echo off the smart glass walls, who was currently causing a scene. Victoria's voice remained calm. We'll bring her back. Just sit down, but Lily was already moving, shoving past the guard, her elegant armor dress suddenly feeling like a costume. She was a mother first, a guest second. Sophie was running through a mansion she didn't know, terrified and crying. Chased by her father's family like she was something to be caught and contained, the hallways branched in a maze of wealth, sitting rooms and libraries and galleries filled with art worth more than Lily would earn in her lifetime. She called Sophie's name, her voice bouncing off marble and hardwood, absorbed by expensive rugs. Behind her she heard footsteps, voices, the security team coordinating through their earpieces. Then she heard something else. A child's sob, muffled and broken. Lily rounded a corner and froze. Sophie was huddled against a janitor's cart, her small body shaking with tears. A man in a maintenance uniform knelt beside her, his weathered hands gentle as he offered her a tissue. He looked up as Lily approached, and for a moment, just a moment, something in his eyes made her breath catch. Recognition, maybe. Or familiarity. The thick-framed glasses and lean face were those of Marcus the janitor from the community center. But the way he held himself, the authority in his posture despite the humble uniform, suggested something more. Mr. Marcus. Sophie threw herself at him, and he caught her easily, standing with her in his arms like she weighed nothing. They're so mean. They're hurting my mom, not with hitting, but with words that make her cry. They called her a gold digger. They said she's not good enough. I know, sweetheart. His voice was gentle. But underneath it Lily heard steel. He looked at her over Sophie's head, and the recognition in his eyes was unmistakable now. He knew exactly who she was. Had known all along. Mississippi Park. Your daughter found me. I was just cleaning, thank you. Lily's voice barely functioned. Sophie, baby, we need to go back, no. Sophie's arms tightened around the janitor's neck. They're mean. I don't want to go back, Sophie, this is a very fancy party. Marcus spoke quietly, directly to Sophie. I'm just a janitor. These people won't listen to me, but you're the kindest person I know. Sophie pulled back to look at him, tears streaming down her face. That's more important than fancy. You said so yourself. Something shifted in his expression. A decision made. He looked at Lily again, and this time she saw the question in his eyes. The asking of permission. She should say no. Should grab Sophie and leave this terrible place, take the money or don't take the money but just escape. Instead she found herself nodding once, sharp and decisive. Marcus set Sophie down carefully, then took her hand. You're right. Kindness is more important. And sometimes, kind people have to be brave. Will you be brave with me? Sophie nodded fiercely, wiping her nose with the back of her free hand. Yes, then let's go teach your family what the Chin name really means. He looked at Lily one more time. Coming, Mississippi Park, the walk back to the dining hall felt like marching toward execution. Lily could hear the chaos before they reached the doorway, raised voices, her name being thrown around like an accusation. The security team had radios out, coordinating the search. No one noticed the janitor and the child and the teacher approaching from a service hallway. They stepped through the doorway together. The dining hall had devolved into argument. Victoria stood at her elevated position, face flushed with anger. Brandon and Christina were recording everything, their follower counts climbing as the drama unfolded. Other family members had taken sides, some defending Lily's right to be there. Others calling for immediate removal. At the center of it all, Lily's empty chair stood like an accusation. I don't want your money. Lily heard herself saying, or a version of herself, the one who'd stayed behind when she ran after Sophie. No, wait. That was wrong. She was here now. But she'd been there too. The timeline felt fractured, moments overlapping. She shook her head, clearing the confusion. I never did. I just wanted Sophie to know her father's family. To feel like she belonged somewhere besides our tiny apartment. Then you're a fool, Victoria's words cut off as she registered the new arrivals. Her eyes swept past the janitor, dismissing him automatically, landing on Sophie with irritation. The child. Finally. Security, take her to a room where she can calm down and, no. The single word rang with absolute authority. Everyone turned. The janitor stood in the doorway, Sophie's hand in his, Lily at his side. He was just a maintenance worker in a humble uniform, but something in his bearing made the entire room fall silent. Excuse me? Victoria's voice had gone cold. This is my home, my event, this is my home. The janitor's voice was quiet but carried perfectly through the space. My company. My family. And you have all forgotten what those words mean. He released Sophie's hand and reached up to remove his thick-framed glasses. Then, with deliberate care, he unbuttoned his janitor's jacket, revealing a tailored suit underneath. His fingers moved to his face, peeling away a thin prosthetic that had altered the shape of his nose. The room erupted in gasps. A wine glass hit the floor, shattering into crystalline fragments. The koi pond display beneath the table scattered, fish darting in panicked circles. Uncle Marcus? Brandon's whisper was picked up by his recording equipment, broadcast to his millions of followers. Richard Chin stood so fast his chair toppled backward. That's impossible. He's dead. I saw the death certificate, Marcus Chen, because that's who he was, unmistakably now, smiled without warmth. You saw what I wanted you to see. He walked forward, each step measured and purposeful. Victoria didn't move from her elevated position. Didn't retreat. But her face had gone pale, her perfect composure cracking at the edges. Marcus pulled a tablet from his jacket, connecting it with a gesture to the room's projection system. The koi pond vanished, replaced by his display. 3 years ago, someone cut my brake lines. His voice was conversational, almost gentle. I survived the crash, barely. While I was in the hospital recovering, I listened to my family celebrate my death. He tapped the screen. Audio filled the room, Victoria's voice saying finally, Brandon asking about the will reading, Christina suggesting they pretend to be sad for appearances. The recording played in its entirety while 50 people sat frozen, unable to look away from the evidence of their own callousness, so I disappeared. Marcus continued as the audio ended. I recovered. And I came back as the one thing I knew you'd never notice, a janitor in my own building. This is. Victoria struggled for words, her composure shattering completely. You're alive. You've been spying on us. Is this your dramatic return? Take back your company and punish us? I considered it. Marcus tapped his tablet again. New images appeared, surveillance footage, test scenarios, evidence compiled over 3 years. But then I realized I needed to know if any of you were worth saving. So I ran tests. The footage began playing across every surface in the room. 3 months ago, Marcus explained, he'd paid a homeless veteran to sit outside Chin Global headquarters every day for a week. The surveillance cameras had captured everything in perfect detail. Brandon walking past without a glance, actually laughing into his phone about something. Christina pausing to film the man mockingly for her followers, the caption visible in the playback, downtown aesthetic vibes. Richard stepping over the man's outstretched legs like he was furniture. Then Sophie appeared on screen, her small figure recognizable even in the grainy footage. She approached the veteran, set down her lunchbox, opened it, and handed him her sandwich. She said something, the audio picked it up clearly. My mom says we help people even when it's hard. Then she gave him a drawing, one of her typical crayon masterpieces, and sat beside him for several minutes, just talking. The room was silent except for the playback audio. Marcus let it run for another moment before advancing to the next test. An accounting error, deliberately introduced into an employee's paycheck. $50 short. The executive team dismissing the woman's complaint, Victoria's assistant actually laughing about it. Then Lily in the HR office, her voice firm despite the resistance she faced. This isn't right. She needs that money. Can I cover it until payroll fixes it? She'd pulled cash from her own wallet, bills that probably represented her grocery budget for the week. Click. A lost child in the lobby, planted by Marcus, perfectly safe but appearing distressed. The family walking past. Sophie stopping, taking the child's hand, staying with her until security arrived. Click. The community center's water shut off, an accident Marcus had arranged. Lily organizing a bottled water delivery, paying for it herself, while the Chin family members who used the facility complained about the inconvenience on their social feeds. Marcus advanced through test after test, each one a small moral moment that his family had failed while Lily and Sophie had passed without hesitation. The weight of the evidence built like a prosecution, damning not through dramatic revelation but through the accumulation of small, everyday cruelties and kindnesses. For 3 years, Marcus said quietly, I tested you. Every single one of you. And do you know who passed? He gestured to Lily and Sophie. The teacher making $42,000 a year. And the 7-year-old who learned kindness from her mother. Lily's hand had moved to her mouth, her eyes wide with understanding and something that might have been horror. Oh my God, she whispered. You've been watching us. Testing us. This whole time, Marcus turned to face her fully, his expression softening in a way that transformed his entire bearing. Mississippi Park, I owe you an apology. I investigated you. I watched you. I tested you without your knowledge or consent. And what I found was extraordinary. He paused, his voice dropping to something almost tender. You're raising my granddaughter to be more of a Chen than anyone in this room. The words hung in the air. Lily's face cycled through emotions too quickly to track: shock, understanding, anger, confusion. Sophie pressed against her mother's side, one small hand gripping Lily's dress. Victoria recovered first, her voice sharp and cold despite the pallor of her face. This is absurd. So you're alive. So you've been playing games. None of this changes the fact that David is dead, this woman is, David is alive. The 2 words detonated like explosives. The room erupted in chaos, gasps, denials, questions shouted over each other. Marcus waited for the noise to die down, his patience absolute. My youngest son witnessed someone tampering with my car the morning of the crash. His eyes found Brandon, who had gone gray. He fled, terrified he'd be killed next. He's been in hiding for 8 years. Until 6 months ago, when he found the courage to contact me. Lily swayed slightly, all color draining from her face. Marcus took a step toward her, concerned, but she held up one hand to stop him. David. Her voice was barely audible. David is alive. He called me terrified I'd hate him for running. For abandoning his family, his responsibilities. Marcus's gaze was steady, gentle. I told him I'd forgive him, if he earned it. If he became the man worthy of you and Sophie. He touched his tablet. The holographic displays shifted, coalescing into a live video feed. The feed showed the mansion's entrance hall, the view from one of the security cameras. A man stood there, visible to everyone in the dining room through the projection. Older than the photos Lily might have kept. If she'd kept any. A beard now, his frame leaner, his posture carrying a wariness that spoke of years spent looking over his shoulder. But unmistakably, undeniably David Chen. He wore jeans and a simple sweater, nothing like the designer clothes that had once been his uniform. In his hands he held a bouquet of lilies, not the expensive hothouse variety that filled the mansion's arrangements, but simple white flowers that looked like they'd come from a neighborhood grocery store. The kind of flowers someone bought when they were trying but didn't have much money. The camera feed had audio. David's voice came through the speakers, rough with emotion. Lily. I'm sorry isn't enough. I know that. I was a coward. I thought my family would kill me like they tried to kill my father. I should have taken you with me. I should have protected you. On the screen, he took a step forward, then stopped himself. The camera angle changed. Marcus must have had multiple feeds queued up, and now they could see David's face clearly. He was crying, tears running unchecked down his face. I'd been in therapy for 2 years, working through the PTSD, the guilt. Dad's been on the phone with me every week, pushing me to face what I did. His voice cracked. I failed you. I failed our daughter. I don't know if you can ever forgive me, but I had to come back. I had to try. Lily made a sound. something between a sob and a gasp. Her hand had moved to the chain at her neck, fingers closing around the ring hidden beneath her dress. The gesture didn't go unnoticed. Several family members' eyes tracked the movement, understanding dawning. "Let him in," Marcus said quietly, and somewhere a door opened. Footsteps echoed through the mansion's corridors, coming closer. The dining room had gone silent, 50 people holding their collective breath. David appeared in the doorway. In person, the changes were more pronounced. This wasn't the polished young executive who disappeared 8 years ago. This was a man who'd been broken and was trying to rebuild himself piece by piece. His eyes found Lily immediately, desperately, and stayed there. "You left me." Lily's words were quiet, but they cut through the silence like a blade. "I was pregnant. Alone. Terrified, I know." David took one step into the room, just one, maintaining distance. Respecting boundaries. "And I can't undo that. I can't give you back those 8 years. I can't give Sophie back having a father." His voice roughened further. "You didn't know my family. How toxic they were. How terrified I was. But that's not an excuse. You deserved a partner. Sophie deserved a father. I failed you both, and I'm so goddamn sorry." Sophie had gone very still, her small body rigid against her mother's side. She stared at David with wide eyes, her mind clearly working through the implications. This man. Her father. Alive. Here, David's eyes moved to her, and something in his expression shattered. He dropped slowly to his knees, setting the flowers carefully on the floor beside him. His hands trembled as he pulled something from his jacket pocket, a sketchbook, the kind with expensive paper, bound in leather. "Sophie." Her name sounded like a prayer. "I'm your father. And I know I have no right to ask anything of you. No right to be part of your life after abandoning you before you were even born." He held out the sketchbook. "But my dad, your grandfather, told me you love to draw. That you're talented. Just like your mom." Sophie glanced up at Lily, seeking permission. Lily's face was wet with tears, her jaw tight with effort to maintain some composure. She nodded once, a tiny movement. Sophie approached David slowly, warily, like approaching a stray animal that might bolt. She took the sketchbook and opened it. The first page showed a drawing of her, incredibly detailed, clearly done from photographs. Mid-laugh, caught in a moment of pure joy. The style was sophisticated but warm, technically skilled but emotionally immediate. "You draw too?" Sophie's voice was small, uncertain. "I do." David's smile was broken, hopeful. "Maybe we could draw together sometime? If you want. No pressure." "At your pace." Sophie looked back at Lily again. "Mom, can he stay for dinner?" The question was so innocent, so childlike in the midst of this adult drama, that several people in the room made choked sounds. Lily closed her eyes briefly, visibly struggling with the weight of the moment. When she opened them again, she was looking at David with an expression Marcus couldn't quite read. Anger, yes. But underneath it, something else. Something that had survived 8 years of abandonment and struggle. "We'll talk," Lily said finally. "Not here. Not now. But we'll talk." David nodded, relief and gratitude warring on his face. "Thank you. That's more than I deserve." Victoria's voice cut through the moment like a knife. "How touching. But this doesn't change the business realities. Marcus, you've been declared legally dead. Your shares were distributed according to trustees who executed my will." Marcus's tone went cold again. "Which I can revoke, as I'm alive. Your power here, Victoria, was always an illusion I allowed, you senile old fool." Victoria's composure had shattered completely, her voice rising. You've wasted 3 years playing janitor while the company has been embezzling. Marcus tapped his tablet again. New documents filled the projection space, financial records, forensic accounting reports, transaction histories. $42 million, to be exact. From the employee pension fund, which you were hiding by selling the company to Rothschild International. Victoria's face went from pale to gray. Around the table, other family members shifted uncomfortably. Some had clearly known. Others were learning the truth in real time, their shock genuine. I had forensic accountants review everything while I was dead. Marcus's voice was quiet but inexorable. You've been stealing from the people who built this company, the workers, to cover gambling losses, legal bills, and Brandon's debts. Richard stood abruptly, his chair clattering backward. Marcus, I can explain. No. The single word stopped him cold. You can listen. All of you. Here's what's going to happen. Marcus turned back to Lily, and his expression softened again. The transformation was remarkable, from avenging patriarch to something almost gentle. Mississippi Park, you came here tonight expecting humiliation and a bribe. Instead, I'm offering you a job. Head of Chin Global's new Community Impact Division. Salary $180,000, full benefits, company car. Your mission, rebuild the soul of this company. Teach us what you taught Sophie. Lily stared at him. I'm a teacher. I don't know corporate, you know people. Marcus's voice was firm but kind. You know kindness. You know how to work hard without losing your values. That's what we need. That's what I forgot to build into this company. Will you consider it? The tears that had been threatening finally spilled over. Lily nodded, unable to speak. Marcus turned to David. You abandoned your family. You ran from responsibility. But you've worked hard to face your demons. I'm proud of that. His tone hardened slightly. However, you don't get Lily back by default. You earn her. Therapy together. Dates. Slow rebuilding. If she'll give you that chance. David's eyes never left Lily's face. I'll do anything. Whatever you need. Whatever pace you set, I need time. Lily's voice was steadier now. To process all this. To figure out what's real and what's. She gestured vaguely at the chaos surrounding them. But you can meet Sophie. Supervised. We can start there, thank you. David's relief was palpable. That's more than I deserve. As he stood, his hand brushed against Lily's, just for a moment, just their fingertips touching. The contact was brief but electric. Lily gasped softly, her body going rigid. David's breath caught audibly. 8 years of separation, of longing and grief and what-ifs, compressed into that single moment of touch. You're really here, Lily whispered, and it wasn't clear if she was speaking to David or to herself. I'm here. David's voice was low, intense, meant only for her despite the audience. And I'm not running again. Not from you. Not from Sophie. Not from anything. Their eyes locked. The dining room with its 50 witnesses seemed to fade, the moment becoming private despite the public setting. Marcus watched them with an expression that might have been satisfaction or might have been sadness for time lost. Sophie tugged at Lily's dress, breaking the spell. Mom, are you okay? You're doing the face. What face? Lily asked, distracted. The one you make when you're trying not to cry but also trying not to smile. Sophie's observation was delivered with perfect 7-year-old frankness. A few people laughed, the sound startled and genuine. The tension in the room shifted, not breaking but bending slightly. David smiled, a real smile that transformed his face. Is that so? Lily was blushing now, color flooding back into her face. Sophie, we talked about the filter thing. You said honesty is important, there's honesty and there's. Lily trailed off, aware that everyone was watching this domestic moment play out like theater. Marcus cleared his throat, drawing attention back to himself. He wasn't done. His gaze moved to Brandon, who had been trying to make himself smaller in his seat, his recording equipment abandoned on the table. Brandon. Marcus's voice was flat, emotionless. You cut my brake lines. The police have evidence. Video footage showing you in the garage that morning. You were drunk, desperate, gambling debts piling up from people who don't accept excuses. He paused. You probably didn't mean to kill me. Just scare me into giving you money. But you nearly did. Brandon's face crumpled. Uncle Marcus, I was high, I didn't think, no. You didn't think. You've never thought. You've never faced consequences. Marcus's expression was hard but not cruel. So here's your choice. Prison, where you'll go if I press charges. Or rehab. Real rehab, not luxury spa. 2 years minimum. I'll pay. I'll visit. I'll support your recovery. But you will face what you did. Brandon was crying now, his carefully cultivated influencer image completely destroyed. I'm sorry. God, I'm so sorry, I know. Marcus's voice softened slightly. And I forgive you. But forgiveness isn't a free pass. It's a starting line. He turned to Victoria. You're removed as CEO, effective immediately. You'll repay the $42 million, I'll set up a payment plan, but you will repay it. And you'll work in the mailroom for 1 year. Minimum wage. Learn what it's like to build from the bottom. Victoria's face was livid, her entire body rigid with rage. You can't, I can. And I am. Marcus's tone allowed no argument. You wanted the throne? You get the basement. Rebuild your character, or lose your inheritance entirely. Your choice. His attention moved to Christina. Your influencer career is built on a lie. Charity work that pocketed donations. You'll make restitution. Every penny. And you'll spend 2 years doing real community service. No cameras. No likes. Just work. Finally, Richard. Gambling addiction is a disease. Get help. I'll pay for treatment. But you're cut off financially until you're 2 years sober from betting. Marcus looked around the room, making eye contact with each family member. I built this company from nothing. I lost sight of what mattered: family, kindness, integrity. I became so obsessed with success that I raised children who only understood wealth. That's my failure. This is my chance to fix it. His voice dropped. And for those of you who think I'm being cruel, I'm being merciful. I could let the law handle all of you. Instead, I'm giving you what I never had, a second chance. The room sat in stunned silence. Some family members were crying. Others stared at their plates or their hands. The power dynamic had completely inverted, the people who'd entered this evening as rulers leaving as supplicants. Sophie, who'd been quiet through all of this, suddenly stood on her chair again. This time no one moved to stop her. Mr. Marcus? Can I say something? Marcus's expression transformed, severity melting into grandfatherly warmth. Of course, sweetheart, I'm really glad you're my grandpa. Sophie's voice was clear, carrying through the space. And I'm glad Daddy's alive. But I have a question. What is it, if you've been the janitor all this time? Sophie paused for dramatic effect, her 7-year-old sense of timing perfect. Who's been cleaning your apartment? The room erupted in surprised laughter. The sound was startled, cathartic, breaking through the heavy emotion. Even Victoria's mouth twitched towards something that might have been a smile. Marcus laughed too, genuine and warm. I have, actually, he admitted. Turns out, I'm pretty good at it. Good. Sophie nodded approvingly. Because Mommy says a man who can clean is a man worth keeping. David's eyes cut to Lily, something playful entering his expression despite the tears still wet on his face. Is that so? Lily had her hand over her face, clearly mortified. Sophie,